Hello, I am about to do the impossible. Many would consider this a pointless endeavor, but I will do it. I am going to defend NIKKE's gameplay. Yep, the core mechanics of point, click, shoot the red dots, shoot the red circles until the boss is down. This has been a hot topic since the release of the game almost 3 years ago. People either think the gameplay is okay, or they think the gameplay is garbage. There's rarely anything above that. And it's true, NIKKE is definitely not known for its gameplay. It's known for its extreme levels of fan service, if you can call it that. The beautifully written story, which has its problems here and there, but mostly it's good, mostly positive. It's better than HSR story, as Twitter has judged. And also the constant updates. You're almost never without a new event in the game. There's always something going on. There's never a dead period, which is kind of the standard now for newer gacha games anyways. So let's talk about some pros and cons of the gameplay. We're going to talk about the depth of gameplay. We're going to talk the mechanics themselves, the visuals or the aesthetic. We're going to talk about the replayability, then the progression system of the game in general, and then a couple more things after that. All right, why don't we start? On the surface, NIKKE looks like a casual tap and shoot gacha. You press auto, hide behind cover, and occasionally pop skills. Yeah, I almost yawned reading all that too. Yet, there's actually a surprising amount of micromanagement that raises the skill ceiling. In high-level raids especially, timing is everything. You're swapping between NIKKEs to manage cover, juggling cover for iframes, monitoring reload cycles, spam shooting, generating bursts whenever possible, timing bursts, even stalling waves so you don't get overwhelmed. And on top of all that, you're building squads that have the synergy and fit the fight. It's subtle, and honestly, most players don't even notice it unless they're deep into challenging content. But when you are in that content, the difference between a sloppy run and a polished run is massive. But here is the problem. That kind of gameplay depth only matters at the highest levels. For the vast majority of the game, you're pressing auto and watching. NIKKE is, after all, at its very essence, an idle game. Sure, there are specific campaign levels that can be completed 5 times easier if you know how to micro, but in solo raid, for example, if you don't already have an optimally overloaded, maxed out team, no amount of microing is going to get you a top rank. So while the potential is there, most players don't ever get to experience it in practice. Let's talk about weapon mechanics. NIKKE actually has 6 weapon types: assault rifles, SMGs, shotguns, sniper rifles, rocket launchers, and machine guns. Each one has its own mechanics and pacing. Elemental weaknesses also add depth. I remember when the game launched, a lot of pros and guides essentially deemed elemental affinity as pointless. Maybe I was hallucinating. But now it's a core part of clearing bosses from solo raid and special interception. Almost every boss now has some kind of mechanic that forces you to bring a certain element if you want to last longer than in bed. That said, diversity on paper doesn't always translate into diversity in practice. The machine gun meta is popping off. Machine guns are easy to use, don't require much timing. Meanwhile, on the other side of the spectrum, rifles are technically rewarding, but can feel like a pain to play. Manualing Alice at a maximum output is basically turning your hand into a arthritis accelerator. They benefit massively from player skill, but is it really worth the hassle? So yes, the mechanics exist, but balance issues make some options far less viable or fun than others. Of course, some players genuinely enjoy spam shooting. Hey, you do you. Not my cup of tea.
I'm fast as fuck.
Now let's get down and dirty. One of the biggest reasons people even try NIKKE is because the game looks gorgeous and keeps the blood pumping, if you know what I mean. The art is stunning. The character animations are fluid, the bosses are flashy and often creative, the maps are surprisingly varied, the environments are destructible, and even little details like reload animations or jiggle physics are polished to a ridiculous degree. Allow me to emphasize that last part with some related footage on the screen. Some visual ASMR, if you will. Top that with one of the best, most diverse soundtracks in gacha gaming, led by a team of grandmasters over at Level 9, and it's clear that visually and aesthetically, NIKKE absolutely nails it. But once again, there are caveats. The screen can get insanely cluttered. Flashbang effects everywhere, looking at you, crown fucking blinding my ass when I'm trying to find the molecule-sized part to shoot. And then you add skill cutscenes into the mix. If you skip those cutscenes, the gameplay actually stutters. Full burst freezes the game briefly, and your cursor stops moving. This is why you see high-ranking players use this option instead to prolong the freeze so you can get a better grip of the situation. Or, at least, that's what I think. Don't quote me on that. It feels really clunky, but maybe this is a get good moment for me. All of this can technically be nullified with skill, but I'm getting old, guys. I don't have esports reactions anymore. I'm still just as horny though. This is a nitpick. Boss design also leans way too heavily on the shoot the glowing red circle. Providence in particular really made me realize how lame that mechanic is. A glowing weak spot here or there is fine, but when every boss is a red circle gangbang, it feels lazy and repetitive. To be fair, red circles are easy for players to see. That's why they're used. They're following basic UX design principles. Nothing wrong with that, right? So if Shift Up decides to change them one day, then they gotta tone down the clutter, or at least give us an option to reduce effects so we can actually see what's happening. All in all, I don't see the red circle jerk complaint too often, so let's leave it at that. Here's where things get a little tricky. On one hand, the fusion of shooter gameplay with gacha systems really was novel when NIKKE came out. Most gachas are either turn-based, auto-battlers, or even open-world RPGs, right? NIKKE stood out as one of the first to actually feel like an arcade-style light gun shooter. That gave it a lot of freshness. The big asses helped too. On the other hand, the actual shooting mechanics themselves aren't that special. You build a team, you sit behind cover, you shoot at a boss, that's the loop. Without fresh innovations, new mechanics or variations, that loop gets stale fast. And after a couple of years, it really has. Progression is the double-edged sword of NIKKE. On the pro side, watching big number go up never gets old. I recently crossed 1 million prowess and it feels good. Big number. You're always getting stronger, upgrading gear, and it feels satisfying because there's always something to work towards every single day. On the con side, progression bottlenecks are brutal. Grinding gear can feel like a chore, and it's no secret the game leans heavily into pay to win. Casino rocks, overloaded gear with random stat rolls, can literally determine whether you place high in solo raid, even if you pulled the right characters. And even if you do get good overload rolls, you're still not catching whales with perfect rolls and max dupes. That discourages a lot of mid-level players from even trying. I think I speak for everyone when I say we need a lot more rocks, like twice as much. This is one area where there is thankfully no significant downside. The gameplay is infinitely more enjoyable when you're using characters you actually like. Thankfully, a lot of top-tier units are also popular from the story and particularly easy on the eyes. The most popular characters in the game right now are also incredibly strong. That connection between lore and combat performance makes grinding a lot more bearable. Let me tell you that. That's it, we made it, guys. The core gameplay of NIKKE is more nuanced and rewarding than its reputation suggests. At its best, it's a surprisingly intricate shooter with meaningful micro, squad synergies, and some of the most beautiful presentation in the gacha space. But it also relies heavily on freshness, character releases, unique boss fights, and big fat juicy tips. Shift Up is doing a massive disservice to itself by also not explaining some of these nuanced mechanics in game. The majority of the fanbase either doesn't know these mechanics existed at all, or do but have no idea how to apply them in gameplay. Even if it was thoroughly explained in game, would casual players take the time to read and learn when the mechanics are used so seldomly outside of hardcore raids? And let's be real, after 3 years, almost any gameplay loop will feel stale. There's a reason Shift Up is working on a brand new core game mode called Surface Reclamation that every single NIKKE vet is excited for. Add on top the fact that raids keep breaking and going into emergency maintenance for the 12th time. Yeah, definitely not helping out with the bad gameplay label. It's nice to get free gems for compensation, like really nice, I can't complain at all. But it also exposes the cracks in QA and in the gameplay foundation itself. So what's the verdict after all this time I've spent playing this stupid game? I shouldn't call it stupid. NIKKE's gameplay is not bad, not even close to bad. It's just inconsistent, sometimes brilliant, sometimes clunky, mostly carried by aesthetics. Are the devs complaining when they're making tens of millions of dollars a month? I certainly wouldn't be. Hope you learned something new. Be sure to check out my Patreon. I do some director's commentary with this vid. Get a little ranty and stuff. Goodbye.